Geordie Journo's back outside the Newcastle training ground, Liam, where you've been digging your teeth into
a little bit
the past few weeks, and we've got a bit to talk about because transfers, we'll get onto that later in the video, but it's been a slow January transfer market, and one of the big stories to come out of it outside from transfers is something you wrote on Newcastle World regarding the training ground. So yeah, just take it away.
Yeah, well, firstly, I would kind of explain a little bit. We're in a strange location.
Yes.
We're not really outside the training ground as you would expect. This is like the indoor facility that they have at the back end of the training ground, which goes onto the train tracks. And we've decided to come here, so we're not fussing anybody. There was actually still quite a lot of autograph hunters and things like that, wasn't there?
As there always is.
Yeah, it's getting more and more and more, just such as the popularity of the team, of Eddie Howe, of the players, that continues to grow. So we've kind of come away, let them have their moment and not be shouting and screaming to be on camera as well with us. But no, onto the story itself. Big credit to, obviously, friend of the channel, Craig Hope, for breaking the story about who is going to be taking over the development of the training ground. My story itself, it was funny because we were both kind of, obviously without knowing, working on the same-ish stories.
It was the same topic but different stories.
Yeah.
I mean,
and when Craig went with his, I got in touch with him straight away and we had a laugh about it. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to fire my stuff up as well. So I put everything I knew on Newcastle World. If you haven't seen it, do check it out, but I'll talk you through briefly what it was here. And it was regarding the budget. I've got really, really solid information on how much Newcastle United have set aside, how much owners PIF has set aside to complete a development, a brand new development training complex, which will usurp this one here in Benton behind us, which, look, it's had £10 million spent on it, maybe a little bit more even from memory. I was shown round. Have you been round it before?
Briefly.
Yeah, you've been around it. We've both been around the training ground, and it's night and day compared to what it was only a couple of years ago. However, having had experience, I've been Aston Villa's training ground. That's not one of the newest, but even there, you just get a sense of the vast size of
Man
it.
City, even
Man
if you
City,
want to
we
look
go
at
there,
the very top level.
The vast size of these things, they're not just somewhere to hang their peg these days. It's got to be more. This is where the players almost live their footballing lives, and they're viewed very differently now to what players seen them as 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when this place was thrown up and was lauded when it was thrown up, because it was a very good training facility when it was brought about. But times have changed, and Newcastle United need to change, and that's the thing now, is you couldn't do everything that you would like to do as a training ground on this site.
No.
That's probably the conclusion we'll come to. And before I talk about the more details of my story, I would say this, that on location, it sounds about right with the speculation that you've seen out there with the Gosforth Park location, but I haven't had that concrete information, so I want to caveat and say that I don't know exactly, standing here today, exactly what the location is. But £200 million is exactly what PIF have put aside to complete this task. £200 million is an incredible sum of money.
It's the biggest investment since the takeover. And
that's the biggest thing about it, is that we're PIF to walk away, and I see this, I've seen it on social media, people speculating, people getting angry, people getting upset. Are they even interested anymore? I get it, and I know why you're saying it, because if PIF were to leave tomorrow, they would leave nothing apart from quite an expensive footballing squad. They wouldn't leave anything really tangible apart from a £10 million lick of paint here. And I get criticised for saying that, but it's said tongue-in-cheek that there needs to be spades in the ground before that commitment, before people realise that commitment.
What we've always said is the PIF takeover lauded as a potential game changing in world football, not just for Newcastle United. And so far what's happened, look, you can't knock it, but almost any new owner with a bit of money could have done what's happened so far. This training ground plan is something that really puts Newcastle a massive stride forward. And when you're so shackled, we won't get into it too much, by PSR in terms of who you can buy, the training ground, the infrastructure is where you can really flex your financial muscles, if you like. And this is a chance for PIF to show that, and Newcastle to take a step forward to becoming that elite football club from top to bottom.
So that £200 million is going to stretch to building, at the very least, from what I've understood and heard, is a mini stadium on site with all the facilities you would expect. that mini stadium, I've heard, will probably likely be used by the women's team. And I would imagine probably the youth teams who play next door here at Whitley Park at the moment. So I think it'll be an all-encompassing complex. However, I do believe there will be degrees of separation with the training complex.
Okay.
It's not going to be a case of everybody lumped in together and training together. There is going to be that degree of separation. You won't have the women and the men's teams and the youth teams all kind of mingling in the same complex.
That's important as well.
My understanding is it'll be very divided, but the mini stadium is a big part of that. It's something that Newcastle United want to deliver for the club as a whole, and that's going to be a good chunk of the money spent. On location, it's one of those that, I mean, we'll go into more depth about the location, but I'd heard on the edges of Kilmarnock, and I heard that 12 months ago now. This isn't a bit of new information. It shows how long I've been kind of trying to work on getting information on that. Around the edges of Kilmarnock, that was just described to me, and I know Craig Hope and his story's gone very big on the fact of Gosforth Park. Now, anybody who knows that area, I'm from Kilmarnock effectively. I lived there most of my life. I kind of know that area, and you're Gosforth now.
Gosforth Park isn't, I mean...
Yeah, Gosforth Park isn't Gosforth.
No.
But, and I think a lot of people got duped when they bought them lovely new houses across the road from the racecourse. I live in Gosforth now.
No,
you don't, unfortunately.
You live about 4 miles away.
You've got a Kilmarnock postcode. You're part of Killy, unfortunately.
You were offending a very niche group of... I know people who live there. I'm sorry, you people.
There's nothing wrong with it. I'm from Killy, but you're posh Killy. You're posh Killy, you're not Gosforth. And when it was said to me on the edges of Kilmarnock, that kind of ties in with the idea that I think that's probably where it's going to end up. It's not a big site, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see. The other developments, and again, this slightly takes us away from where we are and what we're talking about, is my understanding on the stadium. So I know that's one that everybody out there is expecting an announcement very soon, and I've not heard anything to contradict that there will be some kind of major announcement. I know that the club have worked so hard, not only on the training ground and the stadium, to really keep things under wraps. But the issue that you have when you start employing people outside of your ring to start doing jobs, it may be costing, it may be planning, it may be any of the things that come as part of the process. Sometimes these things do start to leak out.
Yeah.
And with regard to the stadium, it is my absolute understanding, as we stand here today, that no definite... Well, right, so I'm going to timestamp this. The last information I had on this was when I wrote the story.
Okay.
So when I wrote the story was Friday. So as of Friday, there had been no decision taken. There could have been a decision taken in the meantime. So I want to timestamp that.
Last Friday.
Friday.
In January.
Yes.
Just in case, for whatever reason, you might be watching this in months' time.
Yeah.
So January 2025.
Yes, in January 2025. So there hadn't been a decision at all made on what was going to happen, whether it was going to be expanded St James's Park, which I think is the absolute least likely of all of the suggestions,
Okay.
and more likely probably some kind of new complex akin with some of the best stadia that you see in Europe. However, that was said to me, it would be probably 18 months down the line that we're talking about anything tangible really happening. Now, what that means, does that mean spades in the ground? I probably still doubt that. Although there are very ambitious owners, I very much doubt that will be spades in the ground, because I think the locations that we know they're looking at, they're widely reported, bring with them lots of organisational challenges, some red tape, things like that. Planning is needed. There will be objections. There will be problems. So 18 months might be a case of getting to the point where it's definitively set down on what is going to happen. But that was the date I was given. Really expect something tangible on the stadium in 18 months' time. And I would, using my own common sense, suggest that's probably not meaning spades in the ground. So brings us on to the other bit that really would probably still come as a surprise to people, even though it was the common sense way of doing things, is that a training ground is going to precede a stadium.
Yeah, and so it should.
It should. It wasn't looking like that the way the direction of travel seemed on a stadium. It was sort of like, what is happening with the training ground? But that is, the training ground will precede.
Yeah. The training ground, obviously you require a lot more space in terms of a footprint, but it's not like the stadium. The USP of the stadium is almost, you want the opposite in a training ground. You don't want a training ground in the city centre, you want it outside. And I think the issue we have with this in some ways is, look, there's houses all over, it's built up, it's a busy road you have to get down. You say, because you live in and around here, you avoid this.
You do.
This
that junction outside, the junction at Benton, you literally avoid. You don't go anywhere near in the morning, in the evening. The players are coming in the morning, and there might be staff leaving in the evening. It isn't ideal.
Well, we do this drive every Friday or every Tuesday, Monday, whenever, for the press conference as well. And I mean, people waiting outside for the autographs is fine, and you almost encourage it in a way, like you say. It's all part of the growing nature of the football club. But Newcastle, it is very much a dated facility. They've polished it up, they've invested in it, and they've brought it up to a level which is of more or less Premier League standing. But even then, it's
got Premier League features.
What I will say, yes, that building behind us, the dome, you go in there, remember North Shield Soccer Dome? It's like that.
Yeah, it is.
Which is now no longer there.
Because it is of a time.
And Newcastle needed something like that, an indoor facility last week when the storm is raging. Yeah. And that's almost a safety hazard in a storm. Because, I mean, me and Jordan, if you go back to our old Geordie Journos videos after press conferences, you do it in there and it's windy, you think it's going to fall down. Watch what I'm saying.
Get a bit jittery.
Yeah, watch what I'm saying there. But
Dom, you've got it demolished before it's even gone.
I know, but all I'm saying is that is basically not fit for purpose. That building behind us really is what I'm trying to say.
I can see the fear.
I know.
I've not experienced that, but I can imagine.
So, yeah, Newcastle obviously put in a bit of a predicament last week in terms of the training, and Eddie Howe said, well, we've got the dome, but we'll see how that fares.
He hinted at that, didn't he?
Yeah, this is a training ground which is functional at the moment, but Newcastle need to take it up a level. And you're looking at the players Newcastle have and want to have, and it goes back to what you're saying. This is where they spend most of the time. Forget St James's Park in some degree. They play probably 2 hours. They're there 2-3 hours every fortnight. Here, they're there every day of the week, and they need a proper top level in order to reflect them as top level players. I'm talking about the likes of your Brunos, your Isaks, even Anthony Gordon to some degree, Sven Botman, players who will be, even in the old clubs, the likes of...
They've come from better facilities.
Lille and
there'll be step downs coming here. That's
well, when Bruno first came, before they actually invested in the training ground at all, he might have been, what am I doing here? And very quickly the improvements were made. And
Sandro Tonali's other half quite liked it.
Yes, but Sandro Tonali didn't, if you remember.
Yeah, he was a bit like, what's this?
Yes. Yeah, you see when he's walking around just like, But, yeah, that is the situation. We all know the training ground is in need of more than just a lick of paint, which it has got, and credit to the club for investing in that, but now it's time to hit the accelerator and take a big step forward.
Yeah. Did Eddie Howe say something about it as well?
Yeah, because Eddie Howe, obviously, at Bournemouth previously, Bournemouth have a new state-of-the-art, or for their level, a very good training ground built. And Eddie Howe played a key role in that. He was asked, will he play a key role in this one? And he'd probably like some input, but he actually, well, we can find out what he had to say, because got the recording from the press conference, the audio at least, from his press conference when he was asked about it last week. So take it away, Eddie.
No, I probably don't think I will be. I think that will be for other people to design. I think you've got to remember the history of Bournemouth. I was all over everything because there wasn't the infrastructure. I don't mean that in a negative way. There just wasn't necessarily the infrastructure at that club that there is here. So we'd gone from League Two to the Premier League. So you can imagine there was a lot of work to do to build the club upwards. This is a very different football club, and I think with decisions regarding training ground and stadiums, I'll be very much in the background, probably hearing what's happening with the experts involved, and then hopefully looking on in awe at what we're going to do.
So thank you, Eddie Howe, for your maybe second or third Geordie Journos appearance. First speaking appearance, anyway.
He's always a welcome guest on the Geordie Journos as
Friend of the channel. You may notice we're now somewhere different, obviously linked loosely to the whole training ground talk. But Liam, before we get on to all that, a word from our sponsors.
So yeah, a word from our sponsors. Proud sponsors of the Geordie Journos, Comply IT Limited. Worrying about disposing of your old IT equipment? Don't be. Comply IT handle everything. Secure collection, detailed tracking and certified data destruction. We also have sponsors Mitigate. Mitigate enhances workplace mental health, helping businesses stay compliant, reduce absences and unlock higher productivity, creating healthier, happier teams. And of course, Four Rivers Financial Planning. They offer holistic financial advice for all stages of life, ensuring your plan remains robust and adaptable in the ever-changing world that we live in. And of course, if you need any details or any websites or any links and things like that, you can find it all below in the description of this video.
Yes, so here we are, Gosforth Park, Liam, Goals Centre. Newcastle be hoping for a little bit more of an improvement in terms of facilities than the Gosforth Goals Centre. But the reason we're here at the race course, Gosforth Park, is the obvious links it has to Newcastle United, and I know you've sort of caveated it with, there's no certainty or no decision made over our location.
Well, I'll stop you.
Okay.
There is a decision made on the location.
Okay.
However, we don't know exactly what that decision is.
Okay. That's...
Yes.
Thanks for saving that.
Yeah, just because the fact is that the drawings are done. They are costing it. It is done. But we don't. The information hasn't quite reached any of us in the press pack yet as to where it's going to be. However, I think if you're a betting man, it's probably safe to say
you like your horse racing, don't you?
Yeah, well, you make it sound like a gambler.
No, I'm saying if you're a betting man,
if you're a betting man,
you do come here.
You probably do. And that's of course the main stand of Newcastle Racecourse. You might be able to catch it over Dom's shoulder over there. So that's why we're here. We're not necessarily definitively suggesting they're going to get rid of the Parklands golf course.
No.
Or we're not going to say they're going to get rid of the race course, which is behind we're all-weather race course now as well, owned by the Rubens. But we know probably with a certain degree of certainty that it's going to be in this vicinity. As I said, up to 12 months ago, I was given the information that edges of Killamouth, and this is as edges of Killamouth as you can probably really get. It's the very far reaches and far edges, and it's limited slightly in that respect, but it probably is around this area, and there is a lot of green space around this. I'm not sure whether if you talk about a footprint of this area, unless you got rid of one of those two key places, I don't think there's a huge amount of space here. We talked about it off camera as well. Of course, you've got it's not a conservation area, is it?
The natural nature reserve.
Nature reserve nearby as well.
Big lake, things like that. It's hard to dig up. It's
I mean, let's be brutally honest.
What it does to the community.
Yeah, I was going to say something that the naturists. Is that the naked people? Not them. The people who love nature might not like us for saying this, but not many people use it, do they?
Knock it down.
Few dog walkers. That's about it. Come on, Bruno needs his nice big plunge pool, and he's not using the lake. No, so I don't know, but there is a lot of green space in and around when you go into expanses, and we've been to Manchester City's training ground, and that because of the nature of how that was built around the Commonwealth Games. It's disjointed, and it's a complex that has roads and networks and things in between it. So is that really out of all realms of possibility that you could do something similar in this expanse and have a bit here and a bit there and a bit there in and around very close quarters? Because you could do that in this area.
Definitely. Right, before we delve into this area in particular, another area that has been mentioned, I know you say a decision's been made, but we'll just caveat it with as much knowledge and much information as we have. Obviously, up near the airport as well, the Bankfoot, sort of north of Kingston Park. That, if you're talking about space, you've got a lot of space there. And also, if we're talking about connection, the current Darsley Park location is awkward for players getting in, getting out. A lot of them live up that way anyway, in Darras Hall or Ponteland, so accessible for them as well, close to the airport, where the fly most places these days can meet at the training ground quickly up to the airport. So that's another location, but like Liam has said, nothing is forthcoming or nothing is concrete in terms of what has been leaked
given to
us.
But I'm led to believe that it has been decided. Okay. It's just we don't know the decision yet.
Flip of the coin.
Yes.
Back to Maiden Castle.
But one thing I remember, I got good childhood memories there. I've got a lovely picture of my mum and dad's house of Kevin Keegan holding me up in his arms as a kid.
I've got a similar. I think one of my first ever trips as a human being was to Maiden Castle. If I can dig the photo out,
that'd be good.
I'll try and put it on. put it on, but we want to get this video up.
Yeah, I'm not going to go digging through the loft at my mum and dad's. And unfortunately, this is one of the worst things ever. As a plane flies over, and hopefully you can hear us and not that. It was back in the old days when you took your photographs and you gave the film into the
Kodak shop on Shields Road.
may well have been, and they gave it back, and it's all red and yellow, and it hasn't come out properly.
Yeah.
Must have been something wrong with that part of the film. Devastating. But one thing you do mention, and it's really interesting, you talk about that accessibility. We'd mentioned that earlier on about accessibility in Benton. Accessibility, you've talked about where you go up towards the airport. You are really close to two major arteries here, because the A19 is a little bit further away for you if you want to go anywhere that way, or a little bit north as well, up in Northumberland. And of course the A1 is
just there.
very close to here. However, what I would say is the road infrastructure around this area is an absolute disaster as well. This is another area.
You speak like someone with first-hand experience and first-hand nightmares.
So this is one of the areas that most commuters who drive anywhere around North Tyneside in this area will know you do not come anywhere near this area most times in the morning and most times in the evening. So that again would be a little bit of a concern, but you would imagine were they to do something huge, complex here, there would have to be investment in the road infrastructure, which I'm sure will be sparked probably as part of the plans. And of course agreed with the councils as well, but it would have to be done, otherwise it's got disaster written all over it, because there's only been a couple of newer estates pop up, a couple of newer shops, and all of a sudden the traffic has gone up tenfold. But that's probably a North Tyneside problem, and it's one that really sticks in my throat with regards to road infrastructure and schools, if I want to get political. But we'll not do that today.
No.
Well, no, what we're going to talk about was transfers, aren't we?
Well, yeah.
So we've done the training ground. If you enjoyed the training ground, do like, comment, share, subscribe, jump in the comments, let me know your thoughts on what you think it should be. Let me know what you think you would like to see on the training ground, and let me know your thoughts on the information that we've kind of given.
Yeah. What I will say, because we've given everything we know, you started the video paying credit to Craig Hope's story. I'll just reference that, because his story, it was different to yours completely, I thought, even though, I mean...
Same topic as you
yes,
said.
Yeah. So Craig Hope's story was about who would be the architects, who would be the brains behind the operation, which his story said was Populous, who designed Real Madrid's training ground back in, I think, 2005. So,
Yeah.
but state-of-the-art, biggest club in the world. So that shows the level of ambition the club are going for.
And I think that'll be akin with the stadium as well. That's what I'm led to believe. So probably just keep an eye on the same kind of names and the same kind of links to same kind of references to levels at which you expect the stadium to look and to be held in a world regard. That would be my hint. I don't know any more than that, but I've heard some quite interesting things that maybe I'll have to write first at a future date when I get a little bit more information. Or maybe Craig Hope will just beat us to that one as well.
Shocking.
If it was going to be anybody, I don't mind it being him. And I said that to his face as well.
Yes, and I also told him that you were messaging me about
Yes.
the story before he put it out as
Yes.
well. So it was, I mean, it was
It's one of those things. It's the
it happens all
snooze
the time.
you lose. I wasn't
Yeah.
snoozing, but
It's
it
a
happens.
different story. He didn't put 200 million. You didn't talk about Real Madrid, so
No.
different story, same topic. And we'll move on now to transfers, because it is the transfer window, and what a window it's been.
Always a great window, isn't it? Look, I think they're doing. My understanding on the strategy is short-term gain for hopefully some long. So
The wrong way around.
wrong way around. Long term. I'll get it out.
I just want to say, it's like 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. This is we've picked the busiest place. There's cars all over.
We have. So apologies if it sounds like we're in a car park. We may as well be. No, it's short-term pain for long-term gain. That's what I'm being told. Newcastle United are really positioning themselves to make better moves in the summer rather than make them now. The PSR concerns of last year and certain transfer decisions taken last year have been learned from, and I think that's what we're seeing now, learned behaviour rather than the slapdash approach which had happened before. I've seen a lot of people criticise might be Dan Ashworth the point the figure at. It might well be Eddie Howe the point the figure at. It might well be Amanda Staveley. I think one thing that really needs to be said about that incredible transfer spend in the first 2 years after takeover, or 18 months or 2 years, however long it was agreed by all. They all saw it as something that they had to do. Do they now sit here thinking it was probably all the right decision? I don't think any of them believe that now. I think they thought they were riding a wave. They were maybe hopeful that on that wave things would come from above and everything would just continue and they might qualify for the Champions League again and it would just keep rolling on. It didn't. It hit a stop at a certain point, which it was always going to. And they've learned lessons. I think what we'll get from this football club over the next few years is a slightly more sustainable version than what we saw in the first 18 months. I've described it as being the type of person, look, I might have fell into this guilty trap at times. You get your pay packet, you live like a king for 2 weeks and you spend it all, and then for the next 2 weeks you start looking in your wallet and your bank account and there's no out there. And that's what Newcastle United did at the first few years of this takeover. And they've learned lessons from it. They didn't sell when they should have sold. They are selling now when they should sell. And they're probably not bringing in players when they could. They could probably push the boat out and bring players in, but what would it do? Potentially put them in a position where they're looking at crown jewels, or which they were last summer. They were looking at crown jewels to sell, or gems that they'd sort of mined themselves in Elliot Anderson. And who's the next gems to mine? It will be Lewis Miley, and nobody wants to see that. And I think the one person he seems much more aligned to the whole policy now, Eddie Howe, when I hear him talk, and I think it's the learned pain of that Elliot Anderson one. I've said it on videos here before. I don't think the Mint A one is that. I think it's different and it hurt for different reasons. The fact that they put so much time and effort into crafting Elliot Anderson as a footballer, who was very naturally gifted as a footballer. We both seen him years back coming up the 21s, 18s, whatever.
It's a breath of fresh air from the 21s.
He was brilliant. And they put so much effort into turning him from a precocious talent into something that can perform at the Premier League level. And now the fruits of that labour are being enjoyed by another manager. And Newcastle United had to just fill a gap and get rid of a debt basically, and it's sad. And I think Eddie Howe felt it. I think his coaches felt it, and I know the football club felt it. So they're not going to put themselves in a position like that again, because that's when the vultures come looking. When they know you're short, the vultures come looking, and that's what happened. Forest were vultures to Newcastle United. Newcastle United will hope they can be vultures to others, like they were Everton 18 months previous with Anthony Gordon. The boot can be on the other foot this time. And I think we'll see a decent spend in the summer. I'm led to believe they'll be in a better position, and that's got to fill you with some hope. Yes, we're all very short term as football fans. We're short term. Why is there no stadium? Why is there no training ground? Why is there no transfer? We're all the same. Everybody, we're journalists, but we're fans at heart as well. And you feel it. I understand that way of going about things, but the football club is medium to long term. They've got to be thinking in those processes, otherwise you end up with the Elliot Anderson, Yakuba Minteh summers and nobody signed if you don't think medium to long term. And I think that's what they're doing, and that to me underlines the idea of like where this social media online narrative builds, where are they even interested anymore? They've never signed anybody. Why are PAF not doing this? Why are they not doing that? Do they care anymore? They're not. There's never been any suggestion to me that. Look, I've heard slight rumours, as we all have, bits and bobs, but I've never heard anything definitive that would ever suggest to me that they're not in this for the long term. And I would just, sometimes when you hear or feel that, just sit back, look at the evidence that you see in front of you. And the evidence isn't always short term, like why this, why not that. They've never said they weren't going to do these things. They are going to do these things. That's my belief, and that's my understanding from a lot of people that I speak to. So we'll wait and see. The proof of the pudding is always in the eating. I could be told something totally different. So could you in the next few days, and that can all change. But as we stand here today, there isn't really any suggestion that it isn't going to be a long-term project.
Yeah, and you're looking at even the club in terms of the infrastructure. We talked about the training ground, the stadium, but just employment level. Scouts are being employed all over the country, all over the world. Paul Mitchell getting an assistant. They're wanting a women's football director, which was previously under Dan Ashworth's remit, under Paul Mitchell's remit. So they are investing to sort of focus minds to get everyone in the right place. That C-suite, as Darren Eales put it, is in place now. So the club, if you go back before the takeover, is just completely different behind the scenes. People are in place to do jobs that was one of probably 20 jobs for Lee Charnley. Things like that. So it's a different thing, and I think that is a positive sign that the foundations have been laid in these past 3 years or so.
We took the mick out of him so much as a fan base, and even as journalists at times. But much respect for that guy for even just holding it together. He didn't get paid a lot, and he must have been the hardest working bloke in football to have done the jobs that he did. Although there wasn't a huge amount got done under Mike Ashley, to be fair. It just ticked along, didn't it? But even to keep it ticking along,
to do it all and still get abuse.
17 people doing what his job was previously. That was just a random number, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, so transfers in terms of actually what's going to happen in the final few days of the window. Like you say, incomings not forthcoming.
I don't think so.
Outgoings, Miguel Almiron's going to be confirmed it could be confirmed by now.
It might well by the time you watch this. There's interest in Matt Targett, has been reported elsewhere. That would be one that I think the club would be really keen to do. And I think the other one to watch would be Vlachodimos as the window comes to a close.
Now Nick Pope's back.
Yeah, I think Vlachodimos has become even more, if he wasn't before, surplus to requirements. And I think we could well see, I would imagine, a loan move. It won't be a permanent because there are implications on moving people, etc. The money that he cost, whatever it may be. I don't think it would massively benefit them unless they can get a good fee for him. So I would suspect probably a loan deal to go and get himself some games and hopefully earn himself a move elsewhere, because it's very clear to anybody that he isn't really wanted here. It isn't a personal thing. I don't think there's been any problems. It's just the fact the way the deal was done and what it represented. I don't really think he's got a future at Newcastle United, but we'll see.
Yeah, if we see Vlachodimos on the pitch this season, something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
With all due respect to him, so I think he's probably thinking. I mean, he had an offer from Al Shabab, was it, who initially approached Martin Dubravka.
Sent you an offer, didn't it? Jordan got an offer.
I wouldn't get an offer.
Jordan
You see me and go, Jordan maybe. And yeah, so that's something that I think his preference was to stay in Europe in some regard. He's got obviously links to Greece. I think he was born in Germany even, and then obviously played for Benfica for a lot of years as well. So he's a vastly experienced goalkeeper, and I think any club in and around the European places would be fancying him in terms of abroad in the outside of the top 5 leagues. So if they need a goalkeeper, so yeah. And then the other one as well, Jamie Miley going out to Hartlepool.
Yes, and there might be some other youth movement.
I think they've tried to get a lot out. We've obviously seen Alex Murphy, Charlie MacArthur, Travis Hearns, and Jamie Miley. There was been all over the place really, because he went to Newport and recalled, and now going to Hartlepool. He's into the final 6 months of his contract, and it was just a case of a fresh start for him because he needed it.
Yeah. Joe White will be an interesting one to watch. See if anything happens there. Who else we got?
Class is permanent.
Ben Parkinson, you mentioned, of course. I think they intended to get him out.
They would have liked to get
Turner
him.
Cook.
Jay Turner-Cook's another one where his future at the club is very much up in the air. His contract's coming to an end, I believe, as well. And yeah, he's who's one of the older ones in the 21s. He's had a few loan spells previously. He just hasn't been able to click for him. So he is another one, a bit like Jamie Miley, just needs that fresh start somewhere. But injured at the moment. Whether he can get fit in time to go out, I'm not so sure.
I think interestingly on the ins and outs, I do think the football club would listen to offers if they were deemed acceptable to quite a lot of players, even in the first team squad, if it allowed them to then go and strengthen. So I think they would let some of, not the players that you would ideally want to let go, but they would let go of somebody if they can get another deal done. That's kind of my understanding. That's not really adding anything massively groundbreaking to it, but I think we need to caveat it with that, because you could see, and I'm not going to name any names, a player who has a place in the squad suddenly get an offer from somewhere in Newcastle, see they can do that deal and get somebody, and if they can set that up, then that's when we'd see movement. Yeah. But as we stand here at this moment, that's not really on the cards.
Yeah. Eddie Howe gave an interesting response when asked about loans. He said there's an absolute possibility of loans, but then went on to say people think loans are like bargain transfers. That arguably in a PSR world counterproductive because they cost a lot of money and you get no return on that investment because the player just goes back to the club. So unless there's some sort of clause and obligation or option to buy, probably not worth doing. And he said players who Newcastle would look to sign who are available on loan probably don't exist in this moment in time. Whether they could exist in the final few days of the window, we'll wait and see. But at the moment, a few more outgoings I'd expect and incomings not forthcoming.
Some youth signings.
Yes.
I'm led to believe there might be another youth signing on the way of interest.
Yes, there's been Kyle Fitzgerald and then another lad.
Yes. I can't really give any more detail than that at the moment because I don't have any. But I'm
Okay.
led to believe
Fair.
there is something.
Honest.
There's something else in the pipeline.
Well, I'm sure people will be really keen to see that.
Yeah.
Game-changing transfer.
I know.
It's the Alfie Harrison, isn't it? That was the signing of last season, last January. But yeah, we'll wrap it up there. I hope you've enjoyed this video. A bit different because it's January and transfer news hasn't been forthcoming, but a bit of training ground news, bit of our thoughts on it and where Newcastle can go from here. But if you like what we do, please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe. Myself and Jordan potentially will be back at the Newcastle United Media Centre on Friday after we speak to Eddie Howe ahead of Saturday's Premier League match against Fulham. And we'll all be there at St James's Park to talk about that. So,
Cheers.
see you there.